Good afternoon, everyone. We're still waiting for the main actor, which is DepEd. So we cannot start the Committee on Education without the Department of Education. So we'll wait, I think, but they're here in the building already, so maybe about 5 to 10 minutes. Magandang hapon sa lahat. Good afternoon to everyone. This meeting is now called to order. Before we begin, let me direct the committee secretary to acknowledge our resource persons for this afternoon.
May we acknowledge the presence of Assistant Secretary Alma Robitorio, Assistant Secretary, Office of Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction, Department of Education. Mr. Samuel Soliben, Director 3, Bureau of Curriculum Department. Minerva Villaflor, Director 4, Supervising Education Program Specialist. From Philippine Business for Education, Executive Director Lab Basilote. Sinergia, John Silva. Good afternoon, sir. From Philippine Institute for Development Studies, Aniceto Orbeta, Senior Policy Officer. Mr. Wallentan from Government Academy Industry Network Incorporated. And from the Australian Government, Department of Foreign Affairs Trade, Francesca Lo Davis. Good afternoon. One more. Mr. Henry Munoz from Education.ph.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Comsec, and once again, thank you very much for coming over to the Senate. Thank you very much for your time. Today we'll be tackling Senate Resolution number 675, and the title of the resolution, a resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the current state of the Philippine education system and the effectiveness and efficacy of existing education laws and policies. Basically, today we want to talk about the quality aspect of our basic education. I think over the past few years, we've been seeing a surge in terms of spending and budget in the basic education sector. In fact, for 2018, the government spent almost ½ trillion pesos just for basic education. This is equivalent of 14% of our total budget and 3.18% of our GDP. So over the years, the budget being allocated to basic education has grown to about 14% on average. But having said that, the focus of the budget is primarily to address the hardware or the brick and mortar problems of our basic education. And what are these? No? Typically classrooms, chairs, textbooks, teachers, salary of teachers, and equipment. No? A lot of the, I was looking at the budget of DepEd, and a lot of it goes through, probably almost 85% to 90% goes to the basic requirements of basic education. No? But today we want to talk about the much more, or a topic beyond the brick and mortar requirement of basic education. This is quality. No? And I truly believe that we have reached a point that, and looking at all the data, we have reached a point that we already suffice the requirements of basic education in terms of hardware. No? In terms of teacher to student ratio has significantly dropped. Our classrooms have significantly grown, and our student to classroom ratio has significantly improved also over the past few years. So I think now we've reached a point that we have to talk about the software, no? And this involves quality. So that's why I filed this resolution to really discuss about the quality and the state of quality of our basic education. And definitely this has a lot of repercussions to higher education and to our workforce later on. So with that, I'm very grateful that DepEd has joined us today, and I would like to turn over the floor to DepEd to enlighten us. What are the programs of DepEd in terms of improving quality? I think, first of all, we have to discuss nasaan ba tayo ngayon, no? And after that, ano yung ginagawa natin to improve quality? No? And I would like to turn over the microphone to ASEC to enlighten us on the quality aspects of our basic education.
Thank you very much, Senator Win. Before anything else, let me extend my greetings to everyone, most especially to Senator Win and to all the guests. Let me also say on behalf of our Secretary, Secretary Leonor Magtolis-Briones, we would like to thank Senator Win for inviting us to be part of this hearing. Before we proceed with the deliberations or the discussions, our team, which is composed of Direk Roger Masapol of the Planning Services Division, Direk Sam Sullivan of the Bureau of Curriculum Division, and Ma'am Mini of the Bureau of Education Assessment, had prepared some presentations, 2 presentations, and we hope to make the first presentation on our K-12 program. As you may know, this is the biggest educational reform that our country had undertaken. So we had prepared the PowerPoint presentation for this. I'll just go very quick in my presentation. Basic. Sir Roger. Please bear with me before the K-12 program, and which includes the senior high school as one of its salient features. Direk Roger here will present the basic education statistics.
Good afternoon, Senator Win. Let me quickly present our basic education situation in the country. I'll be focusing on statistics on schools and students, and then our outcomes performance. So in the next slide, this is just an articulation of the source of data that I'll be presenting. So basically what the data I'll be presenting came from our basic information system, composed of basic education information system and the learner information system, which is an online portal. Next slide. So, as I've said, this is the source of our data. The 2 big system of DepEd. LIS is the learner information system, where this is the repository of students. So, in the 27 million learners of DepEd is already registered in this information system with unique individual learner reference number. And then the EBIS is the repository of our schools, where the basic profile of schools, the name of principal, the location, and other statistics are already in the system. Next. So, the schools. Next. So, currently, Your Honor, we have 61,896 of schools, both public and private. So, if you can see, the highest number is for the elementary level, 45,410 schools in the country. In the next slide, so this is just a categorization of schools by sector, public, SUCs and then LUCs, in private school. If you can see, 47,000 are public school, 14,000 are private school, and then only 309 SUCs and then LUCs offering basic education, totaling to 61,896 schools. In the next slide, just a quick comparative data. Previous year and the current year, we have an increase of 333 schools nationwide, both public and private. And the next slide, so if we look at public school only, we have an additional 210 schools in the country. Now, let me emphasize that the difference, the reduction of the number of elementary school and then the junior high school was due to the integration. So many of our elementary schools were converted into an integrated school, meaning we started offering junior high school school in most of our elementary school to expand access to secondary schools. And also, some of our high schools started to offer senior high school also. Next. Now, if you look at SUCs, we have recorded 9 schools. There's a decrease of 9 schools in the SUCs and LUCs offering basic education. Next. For private school, we have recorded 132 increase in the number of private school offering basic education. Now, we have this regional disaggregation of number of schools. Now, I just want to mention that the region Calabarzon and region 6 and region 3 are the 3 big regions having the most number of public school in the country, also private school. In the next slide, if you look at public only, still region 6 is recorded the highest number of public schools, and then followed by the region 8. Meaning there are regions like region 4A and then region 3 have the most number of private schools in the country, including NCR also. They have the most number of private schools. Next. So looking at private school, so this is the composition. So Calabarzon, as I mentioned, Calabarzon and NCR have the most number of private school in the country, and the least number yung sa CAR. They only have, yung ARMN, they only have 2 to 3 private school, and then the CAR, Cordillera, 283 schools. Next. Now, SUCs, surprisingly, ang pinakamaraming SUC nasa ARMN, which is 56 schools. Next. Now, enrollment. This school year, for the formal system, we recorded 27 million learners from kinder to grade 12, and then broken down into sector and then by level. If we add the alternative learning system, we are currently serving 27.7 million learners in the country. So in the next slide, we can see the increases in by year. The next slide, please. So, but just to highlight yung sa senior high school, we have recorded 10.5% increase compared to last year, inclusive of grade 11 and grade 12 of all sectors, meaning private, public, and SUCs. We have also started recording the number of learners in the PSO, the Philippine Schools Overseas. This is the first time that we have integrated the enrollment figures of the Philippine Schools Overseas. If you look at grade 11 only, can we go back to the previous slide? Just to highlight, Senator, in the academic track, if we look at the trend, we have recorded increase in the academic track from 61% previously, 62, now it's 63. Saan galing po ito? So sa textbook track, we have recorded a decrease in the enrollees in the textbook track from 37.5 to 35.9. And then the arts and design and then the sports track, which are very small, they both recorded a meager increase in the number of enrollment. Next, grade 11, the same trend, 10.1% increase. And then the trend between academic and textbook is also relatively the same. Next, for grade 12, same trend, but there is a 11.06% increase. Next. Now, I'd like to share this share this data, which is, I think it's a good indication, or it's a good data that shows that senior high school, since we start offering senior high school in 2016, we have recorded a huge number of Balik-Aral in our system. In 2015, prior to the offering of senior high school, we have 158,131 Balik-Aral. But come 2016, which is the first year of grade 11, we have recorded at 370,715 Balik-Aral in the system. And then still 2017, it's still high, 301, and then this school year, 2018, it's still high, 254,183. Now, I try to look at grade 7 and grade 11, and I think we have Balik-Aral in grade 7, which is parang ito yung mga huminto na noon, tapos bumalik ng grade 7, 42,675. And then sa grade 11, ito po yung mga nakatapos ng 4th year high school noon na siguro hindi mga kuha ng trabaho, and they come back to our system by availing the promise of grade or senior high school. Next. Ito lang po yung maipagmamalaki namin. Yung aming data on enrollment reporting is 99.6% reporting. Compared to previous years prior to the online system na mga nasa 85% lang yung compliance on the reporting of enrollment. So it's almost 100%. We only have 230 schools na hindi nag-submit ng enrollment figures, but most of these are private schools. Next slide. On ALS, this is one of the priority of Secretary Buones. Next. We have recorded 618 enrollment for this year, 2018. Next, just to compare, last year we have 641,000 enrollees for ALS, but the current year we have 823,000 ALS learner, which is a 28.2% increase. Next. This is just a regional breakdown of the ALS enrollment. If we look at this figure, it's Region 5. Yung Region 5 po may pinakamaraming ALS learner. Next. This is just a comparative enrollment by region. For example, in these figures of K-12, if we lump it up, all of the regions recorded an increase in enrollment if we look at the total. Next. Now, for kinder and grade, for K-6, medyo dito po tayo naka-record ng mga decreases in enrollment, except for ARMM. Next. For junior high school and senior high school, both sector or both level recorded an increases in enrollment. Next slide. For public only, K-12, yan po, mayroon po tayong 2.09 increase in our public schools. Next. Yes, in public school K-6, all regions recorded a decrease in enrollment for K-6. For the succeeding slide, it shows an increases in enrollment by region for junior high school and senior high school. Next. For private school, ganun din po, mayroon pong 5.7% increase in enrollment. In the next slide, SUC's grade 1 to 6 for private, only CAR recorded a decrease in enrollment. Private. Next. Junior high school, maganda rin po yung trend maliban dun sa Region 4B na sa junior high school, 92 students ang nabawas. Next. For SUCs, yun po yun, medyo erratic po yung trend sa ating state universities and colleges and then local universities and colleges. May overall meron pong decrease of 0.87%. Next. Next slide. So just the breakdown of the SUCs and LUCs. Next slide. Yan din po sa junior high school and senior high school. Next. Now, let me present to you the outcomes. Next. Now, we have several ways of computing our net enrollment rate and then gross enrollment rate. If we look at kindergarten, meaning when we say gross enrollment, this is the enrollment regardless of age over school age population. Yun po yung gross enrollment. When we say net enrollment, this is enrollment at the right age. Ibig sabihin, enrollment at the right age over population at the right age also. So, meaning, ibig sabihin nito, ang gross enrollment palaging malaki kaysa sa net enrollment. Kasi sa net enrollment, binabawas doon yung mga overage at mga underage. Sa kindergarten, if you look at net enrollment, we recorded a decrease of net enrollment, but we have recorded an increase in the gross enrollment. Ibig sabihin, maraming mga bata sa kinder ang nag-enroll na overage and others are underage. If we look at kinder to grade 6, we have a slight decrease, maybe because of the decrease in the kindergarten. But if you look at grades 1 to 6, we have maintained our net enrollment. For junior high school, there is a big jump of net enrollment from 75.99 to 81.4. Then senior high school from 46.12 to 51.24, and then if we combine the junior high school and senior high school, we have increased from 75.9 to 79.9 net enrollment. Next, now this is just to show you your age differentiation. If you look at the population official age for kinder is just 2.2 million. Pero yung nag-enroll is 2.4. Ibig sabihin yung difference is the overage or the underage, which is age 5 dapat kinder. Dapat yung age 4 wala pa sa age 5, ay wala pa sa kinder, pero marami pong nag-enroll sa kinder na age 4 at marami ring nag-enroll na overage na dapat grade 1 na, pero dapat nag-enroll sila sa kinder. Sa grade 6 po, grade 1 to 6, ganun din po, medyo malaki-laki yung overage, tapos yung junior high school and then senior high school. Next. Now, in terms of gender parity index, ito po yung ratio of selected indicator value for girls divided by the indicator value for boys. Ang pagbasa po ito is for a value of less than 1 indicates a difference in favor of boys. A value above 1 indicates a difference in favor of girls. A value close to 1 indicates gender parity, meaning if the value of gender parity is between 0.97 and 1.03, meaning we have achieved a parity between boys and girls. So in terms of net enrollment, I think for kindergarten, for this year, we have a perfect parity. We have recorded a 1 value for the parity. For kinder to grade 6, yes, again, I think we are within the range of parity from 0.97 to 1.03. And for junior high school, we have this little problem on parity, and then senior high school also. But if we combine junior high school and senior high school, although it's above the parity range, but still close to 1 parity. Next. transition rate from senior high school, from elementary to junior high school, from junior high school to senior high school. So last year, transition rate from elementary 93, and then we have recorded to a 95% transition. For senior high school, from 90% to 96% transition from grade 10 to grade 11. Next. Now, this one I'd like to point out that we're still reviewing this indicator, but this is just a preliminary result of the computation because we have not yet finished the school year. But the initial computation indicates a good performance in cohort survival and completion rate. But we will be releasing the final computation once after the school year end by April. But this is just a preliminary computation. Next slide. Next. So, sir, this is just a data by region. Lahat ng region meron pong ganitong profile. Hindi ko na po ito i-discuss, sir.
Wag na, Director, baka umabot tayo ng isang linggo ho dito, no? But it's a good preview kung ano yung mga indicators per region. No? Okay.
Thank you, Director Roger. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, our next presentation, as mentioned earlier, will focus on the K-12 curriculum or the K-12 program. And I know everyone here knows about the implementation of this educational reform. Let me mention again that this was the implementation of this program is initiated because DepEd and of course the entire country would like to address the needs not only of the department but most especially our learners as well as our own country and the global community. And so we have the K-12 program, and this program had been enacted under RA 10533. So I will walk you through the K-12 program, and the next presentation will apprise our Honorable Senator and the rest of our education stakeholders here on the roadmap, on our roadmap in enhancing the curriculum. So may we invite everyone to please focus your attention on the PowerPoint presentation. Actually, I have to thank Director Roger for preparing this presentation, the senior high school program. This overview of the K-12 program. Again, there is a special law covering the implementation of the K-12 program. This is under RA 10533, popularly known as the K-12 program. So by virtue of RA 10533, or the K-12 program, we now have the 13 years of mandatory basic education. So we call it K-12. The K stands for kindergarten, and the 12, you are all aware of the 10 years basic education, but by virtue of that law, we have additional 2 years, and we call that the senior high school, which starts in grade 11 to grade 12. Okay, so 4 years of junior high school and 2 years of senior high school. Okay. Next slide, please. So, the aim of this program is to make all our graduates acquire that 21st century skills. And the 21st century skills include skills on information, media, and technology, learning and innovation, effective communication, life and career skills. my presentation is delimited to the organization of senior high school program, which is one of the salient features of the K-12. But of course, there are other salient features, which include the universalization of the kindergarten education, and that is also, and there is also a special law, no, for the universalization of kindergarten. In fact, that law was approved ahead of the K-12 program. And of course, the other salient features include the MTB, MLE, the contextualization of our curriculum. But again, for this budget hearing, Your Honor, my presentation is focused on senior high school. So for the senior high school program, which is being offered in grade 11 and grade 12, we have 4 tracks: the academic, the technical, vocational, and livelihood, the sports track, and the arts and design. And as you can see in that slide, under each track, there are different strands. So let's say, for example, we'll just look into the academic track. Under academic track, we have ABM, yung Accountancy, Business, and Management. And if you have heard HUMS, HUMS stands for Humanities and Social Sciences, and then STEM, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, and General Academic. Next slide, please. This had been presented earlier by Director Roger, but just the same, we would like to, we are presenting this slide to make everyone be aware of the successes of the implementation of senior high school. So the slide will show us the our number of enrollees per track. So pinakamarami pa rin po ang sa academic po. But the slide will also show us that during the first year implementation of senior high school, and then after the next year, there was an increase of our enrollees. So looking at our enrollees for academic track, from 873,813 for school year 2016 to 2017, naging 1 million po plus ang enrollees po natin the following year. Okay. Then the next slide, please. So please allow us to present the early signs of successes of our full implementation of the senior high school. So early signs of success, our transition rate from school year 2016 to 2017, we have 91.09%, then a slight increase. But the slight increase will tell us that no massive dropouts occurred because majority of our grade 10 or 4th year high school students continued on to grade 11. And then the slide will show us the number of schools offering senior high school. The schools are the public schools as well as our private schools, SUCs and LUCs, they had organized their senior high schools, So there were 770 and 533 additional schools offering senior high school the succeeding school years. And this gives us an average annual growth rate of 5.65%. That sufficiently exceeds the population growth rate of 1.5%. And then as you may know, we had this partnership with our private schools through the voucher system. So our public learners who opted to enroll in private schools were afforded vouchers. And this slide will show us the number of voucher recipients from school year 2016 to 2018. And this voucher system was participated in not only by our private schools but also our SUCs and LUCs. This slide will show us our Balik-Aral enrollees. So there was a significant increase of our dropouts going back to school and being part of our senior high school program. The cohort of grade 1 learners, okay, we can skip that slide. It's very consistent that there was an increase of enrollment. So these are the possible reasons of the increase of enrollment, Your Honor. As mentioned, some Balik-Aral students opted to go back to school because of their interest for schooling, particularly for the TVL track. Some of them would like to acquire a national certificate for them to be afforded employment, because that's one of our objectives for offering or the organization of the senior high school, particularly our NC, senior high school learners, NC holders. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so there was a tracer made also. As you may know, last school year was the full implementation of senior high school. I said full implementation because we were able to graduate. Our first graduates of senior high schools was last school year, and we were able to produce more than 1 million senior high school students or learners or graduates. And based on this tracer, 30% of our senior high school graduates had been employed. 18% are already NC holder, and 64% pursued to go to college for higher education. So yun po yung advokasya natin sa senior high school, trabaho, negosyo, and kolehiyo. Okay po. So yan po, makikita po natin yung first batch ng senior high school graduates natin, kung saan na po sila pumunta. Okay, yan po. Sige po. Sige po. If you have some questions, mamaya na lang po, Mama. Diyan naman si Direk Roger na magsasagot. A majority of graduates are pursuing higher education. Okay. Of course, this first year the initial year of the full implementation of our senior high school, we had met some challenges. I understand these challenges. We had this in coordination with PIDS, Sir Roger, right? Oh, yan pala. Acknowledge po. So, ayun po. Perhaps later, sir, can explain to us comprehensively how the research had been undertaken. But for my presentation, initially, let me mention these challenges as found out by the PIDS. Okay. So next presentation. Procurement constraints, siguro po yung masabi ko dyan, procurement of some of the TVL tools, because we had provided our senior high school with TVL tools and equipment. Okay. Mismatch of teachers and subjects being taught, because we recognize that it's the first year of implementation of senior high school, we had created new items for our senior high school, new items for senior high schools. So medyo nagkaroon tayo ng concern po doon. Okay? Low levels of senior high school awareness among stakeholders. Although we had, sige, i-present ko na lang po, we'll just answer the concerns po later, Your Honor. Okay. Unstandardized implementation guidelines, scope of program too ambitious, could be a teacher, not curriculum issue, no focal senior high school person in schools, making external coordination partnerships difficult. Recommendations to strengthen relationship with stakeholders, and we consider everyone here as our stakeholders, so we would like to pursue that partnership with you, closely coordinate with TESDA and CHED and all education stakeholders and partners, standardized guidelines, procurement and hiring of teachers, conduct impact evaluation for senior high school, consolidate anecdotes or best practices in a qualitative study of the senior high school program. Okay, so again, the issues and challenges as well as the recommendations, I would like to acknowledge that the research was undertaken, Your Honor, by PITS. For our next presentation, as mentioned earlier, we would like to present to you the roadmap of the Bureau of Curriculum Development. The BCD is one of the bureaus under our strand, Curriculum and Instruction. The other bureaus include the Office of Ma'am Mini, yung Bureau of Assessment po. Baka may tanong po mamaya sa NAT. Nunan ko na po. And the other bureau includes Bureau and Learning Resources, but unfortunately for this initial hearing, Your Honor, we were not able to invite kasi meron po silang activity po, but in the next hearings po we will invite them.
But later we'll be discussing about the NAT.
Opo, opo.
Kay Ma'am Villaflor.
Opo.
Okay.
Your Honor, may we be privileged also to present the roadmap, particularly on the enhancement of our curriculum, because as you may know, K-12 is really it's not only on the additional 2 years, but it's really on the enhancement of the curriculum. Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm giving the floor to Direct Sam Sullivan.
Thank you, ma'am, and good afternoon to everyone, especially to our Senator Win. In behalf of our Bureau Director of the Bureau of Curriculum Development, please allow me to share the roadmap of the curriculum and instruction strand, particularly on curriculum development, and we entitled it as DepEd's response to EDUC 4.0. We understand that we are now in the industry 4.0. In fact, there was this activity by GAIN where Senator Win himself presented the expectations of industry 4.0. And last week, sir, we gathered all chiefs of the regions and the schools division offices together with the central office to be able to come together and make plans. And thus we have the EDUC 4.0, which is in response to our Industry 4.0. As well, it is in response to Sustainable Development Goal number 4. Next slide, please. So this presentation shows the following parts: the DepEd core process as expressed in the National Quality Management System. Then we have the goals of the Bureau of Curriculum Development, our roadmap or strategic plan from 2019 to 2022, our BCD activities as well. Next, please. This framework shows the QMS of the Department of Education from the community learning centers, schools until the schools division office, to the regional office until the central office. This one is in connection with the strategic direction of the curriculum and instruction strand, and that is ensure relevance and responsiveness of the K-12 curriculum to Industry 4.0. In that framework are the core processes wherein at the very center of it is curriculum development. This curriculum development must interface, must collaborate, must coordinate with learning delivery, learning resource development and provision, and on educational assessment and research. Plus, of course, the various management processes and support processes that are inherent in the Department of Education. Next po. In the Bureau of Curriculum Development, these are our mandates that we have to come up with a national curriculum framework and standards development, the curriculum policy formulation, curriculum technical assistance, office administration, and performance management. And for the next few years until 2022, we have the following goals. First is the review and enhancement of our K-12 curriculum, and we see to it that our TVL and TLE subjects and offerings are also rationalized. The integration of values education across the learning areas of the K-12 must also be considered, plus curriculum contextualization, wherein schools are in various contexts such that our curriculum implementers must see to it that the delivery of the curriculum must first of all consider the uniqueness of the location of our schools, of our learners. In response also to inclusive education, we have to enhance and expand the special curricular programs so that aside from the different tracks and strands in the senior high school, we too are going to offer special curricular programs for students who are interested in sports, in arts, and even in foreign language. Then we have also the special interest programs, the manual of operations, the accreditation standards, and then qualification standards, plus the development, of course, of curriculum guides, which will help our teachers be able to deliver with quality their instruction, plus the implementation of the entrepreneurship program. Likewise, in 2018, we have released the comprehensive sexuality education, and this one now is considered as a key intervention for the presentation of the Philippine delegation to New York in as far as the International Commission on Population and Development is concerned. We are now also implementing the preventive drug education program, and we look forward to the impact of the implementation of this program. Likewise, we are looking forward that until 2022, we will be able to implement well the financial literacy program, plus the introduction of MTB-MLE, or the mother tongue-based multilingual education. Also, in terms of science innovation laboratories and training center, these standards will form part of our STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and math, which later we will call STEAM, where A represents the arts. We also are looking forward to the creation of centers of excellence for special programs in foreign language. And then we see to it that just like what Ma'am Alma said, we continue to monitor the quality that we are dreaming for our senior high school in as far as the 3 curriculum exits are concerned. Next, please. So how are we going to get there? So together, the Department of Education with its various partners and stakeholders shall have a roadmap. Next, please. So we have, in fact, a strategic plan. It's a long document. But for 2019, we were able to set activities aimed at formulating policies so that if we have these policies in place and we are going to implement them, then hopefully we'll be able to realize what we have targeted until 2022. Next po. So these are the policies that we are aiming to release this fiscal year 2019. I mentioned some, but worth mentioning too here is our policy on the citizenship training program, the memo on national heroes, the homeroom guidance program. We also have the policy provision and acceleration for the gifted learners, the physical fitness test manual, which is related with our One Child, One Sport proposed policy. Next, please. So we still need also to finalize some drafts of these policies, all for the attainment of our dream that our curriculum will be in compliance with Industry 4.0, and this would include policy guidelines on design and systems thinking. Next, please. And in the senior high school, we too have what we call unique tracks. One of these unique tracks is the senior high school maritime. Unique track in the sense that senior high school students who like to take maritime in the academic track may do so, while other senior high school students may also take the technical vocational livelihood track for maritime. So these are just other specializations that consider the context, the locale of our senior high school learners. Looking at these 11 unique tracks also, one thing that is quite interesting to hear is on cacao production, especially for provinces that are active in growing and in processing cacao products. Equally interesting to note also is item number 9, which is on organic agriculture. This is also in relation to a Republic Act about our rural farm schools. Next, please. So, in fact, for this school year, we hope to release these 2 policies, the One Child, the One Sport, believing that a sound mind in a sound body is something that we need to consider, especially that there are many challenges right now, especially on mental health. So, sir, this is all for the Bureau of Curriculum Development. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll reserve our questions later on. No? I am sure the panel has also other clarificatory questions. Ako rin meron ako, but
Your
I'll
Honor,
reserve it
let
later.
me just, with your permission, let me just mention that we differ the release of our policy or issuance of our policy on citizenship army training pending the approval of the ROTC. Possible yun. So, wala pa po yung citizenship army training po. You might be asking po.
Yeah, a few weeks ago we had a hearing on the reinstatement of mandatory ROTC. Si Yusek Omali was the one who participated, but we gave him time to work closely with the DND and AFP because this is a joint project, meaning it's a program of DND to be executed in the schools of DepEd. So yung accountability pa lang doon, medyo sino ba accountable? Si DND or si principal? No? Yung mga ganun cases. No? So we need to stretch out that those loose ends, no? Properly. Okay. Ms. Villaflor, are you?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, Senator Win, and the rest of those present here today. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I can just mention to you the national assessments that the Bureau of Education Assessment is administering nationwide. Now, let me start first with the Early Language Literacy and Numeracy Assessment, which is called ELNA. This replaced the old test that we had before called the LAPG, which stands for the Learner's Assessment for the primary grades. And the difference between these two is that the ELNA now has numeracy component. Okay? And this is also given yearly and administered to grade 3. But since we administer that the next school year, we give this to incoming grade 4 pupils. And usually the test is administered 3 weeks after the first day of classes. The second test, national test that we usually would administer is called the National Achievement Test. We have this for grade 6 students and administered to incoming grade 7 students the next school year. This covers the 21st century skills using the learning areas as content. And the next one is the National Achievement Test, also given to grade 10 students, but the ones who take the test are the incoming grade 11, administered the next school year. Also, this is given every last Wednesday, 3 weeks after the first day of classes. The next is the Basic Education Exit Assessment, which we use instead of the NAT G12. This also covers the 21st century skills and administered census. Now, we just had this administered lately, last February 13 and 14. So the results of which will come after 3 months after the test administration. This is administered to all grade 12 students. Okay? This is not a requirement for graduation, though. Then we also have the National Career Assessment Examination called NCAE, and those takers of the exam are our grade 9 students, but sometimes we have those grade 9 students not able to join the national examination, so we just admit them once they are already in grade 10. This is also given yearly, and the content areas are on general scholastic aptitude, occupational interest inventory, and aptitude for senior high school tracks. This is administered every last Wednesday and Thursday of August. That depends on whether the test materials had been procured on time. Then we also have the Accreditation and Equivalency Test, ANE test, also administered yearly. And covers 21st century skills based on the test that will also be implemented this year. Actually, we already had that administered this year. Now, the target the learners in the alternative learning system and the non-formal education programs. These are the ones who are or can take the test. This is usually given every first Sunday of October for the Luzon cluster and every second Sunday of October for the Visayas and Mindanao clusters. Results of the test is also released after 3 months from test administration. The next one is the Philippine Educational Placement Test, the PEPT. We use this one for placement and for validation. When we administer this for free in connection with Independence Day, registrants can either take that for validation or for placement. When we say validation, the students who take this test come from or they have been enrolled in schools that have no permit to operate coming from DepEd. And also for placement, we use the same test material for placement if the learner who takes the test is over age for the grade level. So in the K-12 program, we follow the age of the learner that would be appropriate for the grade level. So for a kindergarten to start school should be 5 years old, then followed by grade 1, 6 years old. So if the kid that takes the test is over age for that grade level, then we give the PEPT or the Philippine Education Placement Test. The rest of our tests are for teachers and also for the superintendents. I guess we'll just focus on those tests for the students. That will be about all. Thank you for listening.
I just have a question. No? Itong 7 na test, ibig sabihin, if you're a student, you have to undergo 7 different tests? Ganun ba yun? Kasi I wrote down 7 tong examination.
No.
So for an ordinary, typical student, ilan test ang tinitake niya?
Initially, I have to mention, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen, our key stages po. So, K to 3, first stage po. So, yung assessment, L na po, dun sa grade 3. Then, the next stage is, the second stage, yung grade 4 to 6 po. So, we administer NAT to grade 6. Then, the next stage, yung 7 to 10 po. So, NAT din po yon sa grade 10 po. And then, yung next stage po, the fourth stage, yung sa grades 11 to 12. Yung sa grade 12 po, we administer, we call it BIA, the Basic Education Exit Assessment po. So, yun lang po, grade 3, grade, opo. And then
4
grade,
tests lang.
opo.
In the student life, or at least if you are studying in our basic education system, you have to take 4 different examinations in your entire student life.
Tama po, Your Honor. But these are the national assessments po.
Correct.
In addition po, dun sa mga formative assessment, yung mga quarter examination po, ng mga being administered ng mga schools po natin.
And itong 4 na test na ito ba yung ginagamit natin to determine whether the quality of our education system is improving, deteriorating? Ito ba ho ang ultimate gauge? Because in mga presentations earlier, all of those are enrollment indicators, no? But what is the gauge to determine the quality of our education. Ito ba ho apat na examination?
The exams that we administer will determine whether our kids are meeting the standards of education. So we administer the ELNA if for grade 4, incoming grade 4 students, if they, to check whether they are meeting the standards for the K to grade 3.
Okay. So, in other words nga ho, itong for examination are the determinants whether our education system is improving, deteriorating, or stagnating.
Could be. It
Can
could be, yes.
Kasi we have to have some measure.
Yes.
No? Diba? In enrollment naman is not related to the quality. No? Of course, it's related to the overall system. No? But in terms of quality, when I say quality, in students ba natin, are they responding to the needs of our society, the needs of our country? Are these the indicators we can use?
When we formulate items for all of our tests, we refer to the table of specifications, which are taken from the based on the curriculum for each grade level. So, for example, we have our NAT G6. This is the competences that are included in the table of specifications that we use in formulating the test items are based on those that are found in the curriculum for grade 6.
Your Honor, if we base it on the strategic goals of our department, of course, we would like to mention one goal is on access, another is on relevance and quality, and the other is on governance. We consider that the results of NAT is one of the indicators. But we do not measure, personally I say, we do not measure the success of the educational system based on the results of the NAT only. Because as presented earlier by Direct Roger, we have other performance indicators for access like participation rate, yung dropout rate po natin, ganun po.
I see naman malaking improvement, no? Especially when the conditional cash transfers were implemented. The participation rate really improved a lot. No? I think Love will agree with me on this one. But now, because nag-improve yung ating participation rate, and hopefully at one day, no, 100% ang mag-aaral, then we have to really talk about, are our students responding to the needs of our society, no? Industry in particular, no? Because we want to have, at the end of the day, gusto natin may trabaho sila, no? So ang ano ko lang, anong indicator nagsasabi ngayon na yung mga students natin, maganda yung kanilang performance, the quality of our education gumaganda, and I think after all of the presentations earlier, the NAT and all of these tests are probably the most relevant. No? Of course, we take everything as a whole, but I want to know kasi what measure can we use to say that the quality of our education is improving, or at least at par, no, with our maybe our peers or our neighboring countries. No?
For the results of our tests, since we are talking about 21st century skills, this is more on checking whether the students are acquiring the skills that are indicated in our curriculum, or competences that are indicated per curriculum. So, for example, for the results of our NAT, these are what you call this, released, and their performances are based on proficiency levels. So we have, for example, this is very small. We have high proficient performance, which is from 90 to 100, then proficient 75 to 89, nearly proficient 50 to 74, low proficient 25 to 49, and not proficient 0 to 24.
Ma'am Villafort, do you have the results? with you right now?
I have,
Your Honor, can we provide you after this hearing po?
Okay,
We'll
because that
take
is
note of,
actually the point of discussion why we are all here, no? In my view, and I don't know with the others, no? But the examinations is probably the most significant measure of quality, no? Taken as a whole, kasama yung participation rate, that's the whole system, no? But I want to zero in on the quality of our education, especially the outcomes coming from our students, no? Kasi nga, over the years, alam niyo, almost 18 years na ako sa public service. From the time I started in 2001, talagang nakita ko pinag-uusapan parati classroom teachers, classroom teachers, classroom teachers. But when I was looking at the indicators, we already reached a point na sufficient na ho yung classroom teachers natin. Almost, no? Almost, in general. Now we have to talk about quality and responsiveness to Industry 4.0. I think a lot of the stakeholders had their own conferences or own summits on Industry 4.0 kasi very, ano rin sila na kumbaga, kinakabahan rin sila kung kaya ba natin rumisponde, no? So I've attended, sir, magkasama tayo, Sir Samuel, no, doon sa isang conference. And that's what I want to zero in. No, the quality of our education system, our students, the student performance, and the student responsiveness. No? That's what I want to zero in. And I don't know kung meron ho kayong data on that or statistics on that.
we'll take note of our deliverables after this hearing po, Your Honor.
Actually, itong planning, did this come from your office? Itong Q&A, DepEd to no, for sure. Pero nakasulat to dito, DepEd Planning Service. Nasa inyo ho to, no? And this is a very thick document. No? Parang ganito kakapal ho to. Ganito kakapal ho to Sir Rogel. No? Buti na lang ho, wala akong asawa, kaya over the weekend binasa ko ho lahat to. No? Nowhere in this thick document discussed national achievement test or anything pertaining to quality and performance of the students. No? Wala ho dito. Meron siyang literacy, basic literacy, but literacy is read and write No? But wala ho yung performance of our students. Kaya nung binabasa ko ho to, kompleto to lahat. No? Ilan ang pumapasok sa eskwelahan natin, ilan participation natin, ng budget natin, pero walang nagsasabi, ang student ba natin magaling o hindi magaling? Wala ho dito. Mayroon nagsasabi, nagbabasa o hindi nagbabasa. But hindi ho nagsasabi kung magaling o hindi magaling. So I took it upon myself and ako na ho ang nag-research. Actually, hindi ako nag-research. Sila ho nag-research. And I want to show to you what we found out. No? And this is actually the point of discussion today. And some of this information came from DepEd. So pwede nyo hong sabihin kung tama o mali. But these were all called from the website. No? Some from requested documents from DepEd itself. No? So let me just direct you to the screen. Oops, tama ba ito? Ano ba ito? Ayan. So itong, this is our national achievement test for the last 10 years. And if you look at the grade 6 and the grade 10, it deteriorated in the last 2 school years. No? Before, grade 6 was averaging at least naman above 50%. And then our grade 10, ito high school to. Nakita ko rin to nung mayor po ako sa Valenzuela. It's barely passing 50%. But in the last 2 school years, bumaba siya below 50% for both grade 6 and grade 10. No? And you can actually let me know if this is an accurate information, but this came from DepEd. No? And in sinasabi ho ni Ma'am Villaflor about proficiency, I know you have a different ranking system right now. If you look at all the different subjects, no, math, English, science, puro low proficient tayo eh. No? This is for grade 6 and for grade 10, low proficient tayo except for English in the problem solving aspect. No? I think you divided this because this is in response to the Industry 4.0 requirement. No? I think the examinations were designed so that it will respond to Industry 4.0. But nevertheless, lahat ho tayo is low proficient. No? And in the absence of an international comparison, no? In fact, I was trying to compare ourselves internationally. I believe that this year lang tayo sumali ng PISA, no? I believe. But I remember when I was a congressman, kasama ko si Adnan, our in-house economist. Pinuntahan ko at then, dati si ASEC Jess Mateo, no? And meron kasi akong isang proposal when I was a congressman to file a resolution to urge DepEd to participate in PISA. Kasi para alam natin kung nasaan tayo, di ba? And I remember, di ko makalimutan no, to, sabi ni Jess nung pumunta kami doon, Congressman, una-una mahalin PISA. No? Mahal yata yung participation eh. And second, alam naman natin yung kalalabasan. Bagsak tayo lahat. No? Bakit pa tayo magbabayad kung bagsak tayo? Siyempre, wala na ako masagot, di ba? So we didn't file that resolution anymore. So in the absence of a comparison, we compared it with indicators coming from the World Economic Forum, in which pagdating sa quality of primary education, we're just hovering on the average, no? Despite the increase in budget in the past few years. And if we compare ourselves to the Global Innovation Index, wala pa tayo sa average, no? We're just 17% in terms of score. No? Ngayon, I think World Bank had a study, no, in partnership with DepEd, no, in 2016, and they looked at the performance of our teachers, no, both grade 6 and grade 10. And ang lumalabas, ang scores ng teachers natin in grade 6, except for English, are all below 50%. No? The same with grade 10 are all below 50%. No? English, obviously, yan one of our core competence. Mataas siya sa grade 6, but pagdating ng high school, mababa siya. So, this is a very important slide because our teachers are the main source of knowledge of our students. No? So, it's important that we have teachers who are performing well and performing even much better than our students. And we also looked at yung passing rate ng LET. And to my surprise, ito mas alam nyo rin to, pababa ang passing grade ng LET ng elementary teachers, no? From 33%, ngayon 27%. In fact, mas madali pa maging abogado tsaka ng doktor kaysa maging teacher ngayon. No? And I think the reason for that, because of course, kung ang ating mga students are not performing well, pagpasok na ng college, of course, mahirapan sila pumasa ng LET examination. No? The same goes with secondary teachers, about 37% on the average yung passing grade. No? And this actually came, of course, K-12, the promise of K-12 is jobs, di ba? Isa sa mga, I remember when I was a congressman also, in-implement natin in K-12. I supported it because I want my constituents to have jobs. But after that, much great promise of employment, Job Street came up with a survey last year at sinasabi nila na 35% hindi pa ready yung ating mga K-12 graduates at 41% sabi, hindi namin sure kung kukunin namin yan o hindi dahil kulang nga ng skills. No? And if you look at also this one I presented in PBED, the time our high school gets hired, 3 years bago siya ma-hire and 1 year for a college grad. No? And this is an indicator that our high school graduates are not ready to participate in the labor force. So in short, ma'am, our national achievement test has been deteriorating. No? And on the average, nasa 40 na lang tayo for elementary, 40% and 40% na lang tayo sa grade 6, 40% and grade 10, 40% in the last 2 years. No? And this is quite alarming, no? Because we've allocated significant amounts of money to DepEd, no? 500 billion pesos na nga ang binibigay natin. Pero the quality of our education, especially the performance of our students, is going down. No? And that's where we are right now. That's why we asked for this hearing, because we have to talk about this. No? And sa akin, yung brick and mortar in classrooms and teachers, na-solve na natin yan No? Ito naman yung problema na hindi natin nasosolve pa at deteriorate yan ng deteriorate. And if we don't address this immediately, then industry will have a problem. No? Makikita lang natin yung let passers pababa rin ng pababa, and that might spill over to the other professional licensure examinations also. So that's where we are right now. That's why we asked for this hearing, because a lot of people are alarmed. I'm alarmed, no, being an education advocate, and we want to know from DepEd kung ano yung ginagawa nating mga reforma, no, in terms of quality. No? And that's what we want to hear from ASEC.
Thank you again, sir. At the outset, let me also mention that there was a shift also, not to rationalize the results, the results of our NAT, but when we implemented the K-12 program, and we are saying that we would like our learners to be equipped with the 21st century skills, there was also a shift, Your Honor, on the construction of our assessments, like the NAT. So before we base, NAT is a competency-based assessment, but starting last year, when we already fully implement, when we are fully implementing now the K-12, yun nga yung gusto natin, 21st century skills. So talagang nagkaroon din ng shift ng framing ng questions ng NAT. So yun nga yung sinasabi natin, we cannot really compare yung result ng latest NAT dun sa previous NAT, kasi kung makikita nyo talaga po natin na talagang bumaba po yung NAT results natin. But just the same po, we recognize po that there's still a lot of things to do. That's why initially we had presented to you po and everyone else the roadmap of the curriculum, because as we say, the curriculum is the heart of our educational system. But this curriculum, the enhancement of the curriculum, cannot be achieved if we don't get the support of the other offices, like in the CI strand, yung learning resources, kasi pag napakita po kanina ni Direct Sam, nandyan yung interface kasi pag nandyan nga yung curriculum, kung wala rin yung learning resources, so isa po yung na isang pagbabago rin po yung reproduction po natin ng mga learning resources, and at the same time yung sa learning delivery po natin, and all the offices, like yung sa administration, yung provision ng mga equipment po natin. So lahat po yun, we recognize and we own the concern, and DepEd, with the support of all education stakeholders, we will address po the issue. That's why initially I had mentioned that we are very grateful that we are part of this hearing.
Ma'am Villaflor, our data is the same with your data, at least in the last 2 years, na 40% ang grade 6 and 44 ang grade 10. Ganun po ang results for 2016-2017 school year.
I have here results for 2 school years from 2015 to 2016 and 2016, 2016-2017. So for our grade 6, the MPS, or the mean percentage score, that the highest mean percentage score that was achieved was that of CAR, having achieved 47.90%, and the lowest that we've had was for Region 5, which was 38.68. This was the NOT G6 back in 2015 and 2016.
So nasa pasok ko dun sa kaninang pinakita ho natin.
Yung proficiency levels, okay. For the proficiency level, the highest that we had here is 47.90, and that is nearly proficient.
Yeah, but nasa 40s, in other words.
Yes.
No? It's in the range of the 40s.
Yes.
We want to hear the other education advocates, no, and we've heard the presentations of DepEd. We want to also hear your comments and your actions. We'll start with PBED, Love.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Senator Win. Thanks for having us. I'll just read a brief statement, actually, and if you may indulge me. The Philippine business community is one with government, and especially the Senate, in its push for quality, relevant, and accessible education for all. Indeed, we want our education system to succeed. For an educated citizenry is key to national competitiveness and shared prosperity. What we want to see is a Philippines where every Filipino is educated, with learning proficiency at par with countries with high human development levels, with good jobs able to support a middle-class lifestyle, and where all sectors work together to create more opportunities for future Filipinos. In view of the Senate-led review of Philippine basic education, we urge that long-standing and cross-cutting issues be examined in aid of legislation and policy reforms for an education system that enables all Filipinos to lead productive and meaningful lives. We thus make 3 key points for reform. Number 1, we, just like what Senator Win is saying, we need longitudinal, comparable, and internationally benchmarked data, not just on access, but more importantly, learning outcomes, for evidence-based decision-making, because we need to know where our learners are, whether they are learning, if they are not, why, and therefore what do we need to do in order for us to address those learning deficiencies. On the issue of K-12, we also need to know where they are after senior high school. So actually, if we could get some data also from the CHED to validate the data that was presented earlier about like 64% went to higher education, is that really true? So we need to see just some validation of access data. And for those who drop out, gender parity issues were also discussed. It's dropping out is actually a problem of men or boys, so we need to know why our boys are being left behind. And then for the women who are more educated than their male counterparts, why are they not part of the labor force? Because they opt out actually even after they've been educated. So we've been investing, but then they don't participate in the labor force. The second issue that we wanted to highlight, and a key reform area, is we must examine and reform the way we train and certify our teachers. The good senator presented data on the competency of our teachers. We think that we need to address the problem not at the in-service level or those who are already teachers, because we have, I think the DepEd has a lot of programs for professional development, but we also need to look at pre-service reforms. How do we certify our teachers so that we can be sure that by the time they are licensed to teach, in our case for life, they are actually classroom ready. They enable learning in the classrooms, and they support the learning proficiency of our children. We need to look at that. And I think here, because the beauty of the education system is it's not just a DepEd problem. You know, it's really an interrelated set of concerns that need to be addressed, not just by DepEd, but by the CHED, TESDA, and in this particular case for teachers, the PRC. And so if we could also bring them in, that would be good as well. And just to explain why the passing rate in the licensure exam has been going down. And then thirdly, just connecting education to employment, which is actually the reason why PBED was established in the first place. We need to look at the school to work transition. It's actually hopeful, it's a more positive data that was presented earlier, but there's even a worse data data point that's out there, which is the transition from school to a wage job, meaning a job that can actually sustain a livelihood. And for a high school graduate, it's longer, it's about 4 years. So how do we shorten that? Because after a number of years of schooling, you expect that you're able to support your family and to live a good life, but it's kind of hard for you to, it's still hard for people to find jobs. So we need to shorten that transition period. And I'd like to say that there have been a lot of improvements in our education system. It's great. It's good that we have improvements in our access and participation numbers, but we cannot just stop there. We need to make sure that every Filipino learner is in fact learning. So from low proficiency, we need to go to high proficiency, or at the very least proficient, right? So that we can really we can address the other issues. I'd like to end my statement with the push for maybe continued conversation after this initial preliminary hearing. We hope to have more of these discussions, and I'd like to voice out our commitment to be part of this reform process, and should there be additional conversations, we'd love to be part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Love. I know PBED is composed of industry leaders, corporations, companies. What is the reaction of your members in terms of, let's say, the K-12? What is their experience with the K-12? Because I think K-12 now it's in full effect, no? And again, the great promise here is employment after. So from your discussions with your members, what are their experiences? Are the K-12 graduates employable in their respective businesses? Ano ba yung mga experience?
So when we initially did first I want to say that Philippine Business for Education and the CEOs on our board are 100% supportive of the K-12 reform. We were actually one of the groups that pushed for this shift. So we are very supportive. Now to your question, Senator, about the employability of K-12 grads, just to nuance the job street data, willingness to hire, the readiness to hire is actually not that they are unwilling, it's just that their systems are not built to hire K-12 grads, because in many of our HR protocols or job ads, it looks for minimum 2 years college or college graduate. So it's more of like we need to adjust the HR policies. But from a campaign we recently implemented, I think late last year, we did a kind of like a coalition of the willing of employers who would like to open their doors to K-12 grads. And what we can report is that after they've tried out a K-12 grad in their companies, their perception of the capacity of K-12 grads has actually improved. So meaning out of the 5 companies that did not have previously a K-12 grad employee, 3 have changed their policies so that they are now willing and are going to continue hiring K-12 grads. So because this is a new reform, it's a new system, there will be birthing pains, but so far the reaction has been good and the experience has been good. In fact, let me just add that one of the major banks in the Philippines administered the same test to college graduates and K-12 grads in their hiring process, and actually K-12 grads did more so much more better than the college graduates. So and that's the biggest bank actually. You can check which one it is. But yes, it's the biggest bank in the country administering the same recruitment test, K-12 grads and college grads. And they're saying that K-12 grads can do many of the entry-level jobs. So the experience has been good, and they're very much willing. Now the challenge is for the graduates and for educators to actually market our K-12 grads and say, hey, they have these skills, hire them.
You brought up a very good point, and I think DepEd should take note of this, no? Because after K-12, a lot of the industry, and as well as government, have not changed their qualifications. No? Bigyan ko kayo a very specific example. In the research namin, and I know this for a fact, for example, kailangan mo traffic enforcer. Ang nakasulat sa requirement ng traffic enforcer is 2-year college minimum. No? But ngayon, ang 2-year college minimum is K-12. No? But in the CSC requirement for qualifications, some of the entry-level jobs, nakasulat, marami kasi meron tayong doon mga 2-year college grad eh. And the same with industry also, no? Some of the simple jobs or entry-level jobs. But see, the Civil Service Commission has not changed that. So even gobyerno, we're discouraged to hire K-12 because in civil service requirements have not been updated to accommodate K-12. So ngayon, ang isip I guess, kaya makikita natin maraming academic strand kasi inisip nila, kailangan pa rin ng college. No, kasi pag tinignan nyo yung high school requirement ng CSE, in 2-year college is actually equivalent to K-12. You know? And we found that out, and that needs a lot of collaboration between CSE and also the industry. Kasi yung responsiveness ng industry, mabagal rin eh. And admittedly, gobyerno mas mabagal eh. Sariling gobyerno nga, hindi tayo nag-hire ng K-12 graduates kasi sabi ng CSE, dapat 2-year, minimum 2-year college grad. And I think DepEd should also be proactive in that kasi sayang eh. Now even now, whenever we conduct focus group, ayaw pa rin ng tao ang K-12. No. In fact, marami pa rin gusto nilang, they don't find K-12 useful in their family lives. And because nga, there's also, I guess, transition problem, or in this case, I guess connectivity or synergy problems with the industry and also government. No? But you made a very strong point because we also found out na even the Civil Service Commission, they're not ready to accept K-12. No? Yeah. But is the industry doing anything to change that minimum requirement?
Yes. So actually, we launched a campaign called First Future. We're targeting big companies, big employers to change their HR policies. So far, sir, we've actually gathered over 3,500 employment positions that companies have opened up specifically for K-12 grads. So there's already that growing awareness. And actually, I'd like to respond that yes, our industry is also aware that we're kind of slow in trying to match that, right? But there's that growing awareness of industry's responsibility to also make sure that there's something that's waiting for our graduates at the end of the day.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ma'am Love for your comments, and at the same time to say DepEd welcomes your suggestions. Very briefly on the 3 suggestions. On the first point, we would like to mention that DepEd had participated in 3 international assessments. One is the TIMSS, the other is the CPLM, and the third is PISA. So perhaps in the succeeding years, we will be able to compare our results as against the results of other countries, but not really on competition on how we fare and how can we improve, particularly our educational system. On the second point, we have this council working with DepEd, the TEC, the Teacher Education Council, which serves as our conduit with the teacher education. This is premature, but let me just mention that with DEP and TEC, we are working with TEC because the secretary, or let me mention that my primary, the USEC of CI, sits as the shall I say, the chair of the council. There is a dialogue or conversation on the possible on the proposed policy, particularly on the admission requirement for teacher education program. So baka pwedeng masagot po nung yung concern number 2 po ninyo. And as for concern number 3, we have this conversation with our school heads that even before the close of the school year, the schools had already identified identified our senior high school graduates who will proceed for further education, who will opt for employment or for the other exit points. Yun po. But just the same, we can work with the TESDA and CHED for that concern, particularly on the deployment of our senior high school graduates. And we would like to mention also that after producing the first batch of senior high school graduates, as reported earlier by Director Sam, we are reviewing our curriculum guides, and in the review, we invite experts, we invite the business industry. We have this conversation with them for us to assure them that we will be producing the right graduates, the graduates that they need in their industries.
Thank you, ASEC. Henry, any comments?
Sure. So, Senator Nguyen, honorable members of Representative DepEd, thank you so much for having us join. I think, at Education we have a pretty simple mission, well, simple but ambitious mission, which is we want every Filipino young person to be better informed when they're making their decisions for their education, their career and their life choices. And I think, we've been staunch supporters of K-12 ever since it launched. And until now, we have worked with DepEd and will continue to do so. I think for us, a couple of things that I thought came out of this discussion, which we found quite interesting. I think one is we agree that access is the bedrock of better outcomes. And so I think all the hard work that's been done in increasing access in the last few years is allowing us to have this conversation now about outcomes. I think without access, we wouldn't even be discussing outcomes, we'd still be discussing access. So we think that's like a very positive development, and the public-private partnership has worked very well. And I think the data that you shared proves it even more that students are and their parents are very much enjoying the choice that they have between both public and private education. I think there's really 3 outcomes that we're, I guess, particularly interested in as Education. I think the first one is around information dissemination, which I think was on one of your slides, which I thought was great, about how do you make sure that stakeholders are aware about all the different policy changes required in senior high school. But likewise, are students aware of what senior high school is meant to do, but also not necessarily meant to do? I think one of the problems when you have a large-scale reform like senior high school is you almost will have, millions of students pinning millions of dreams on one reform. And one reform cannot deliver a million personalized types of education and outcomes. So the first thing I think is, we're staunch believers in information dissemination, and so I think any policy reform that facilitates sharing information about the options that students have is something we very much support, and if there's a role we can play in helping this out, we'd happily play a small part. I think the second one is, and this has been discussed, was around measuring the flow. It's very hard to manage what you don't measure. And I think, one of the challenges that we face at Education, which I'm sure is shared by many on this panel, is how do we measure at scale where students are going? I think the LIS is a fantastic way of measuring that. We also have some data that we're happy to share around what students are searching for online. But I think fundamentally, the more we understand where people are going, the better we'll be able to, address this through a mix of policy reform or information dissemination or changes in the curriculum. For us, and this leads us to the third outcome, which is, whilst we know that personalized education is a goal in the long run, it's also a very expensive goal. But I think one thing that we can already target now is what we would call personalized outcomes. And I think here I would love to draw the attention to the fact that not all students will finish senior high wanting to be employed at graduation. And we think that's a good thing, because not all companies will be able to hire grade 12 students, but also not all grade 12 students want to be hired at graduation. I think if you speak to most students, many of them and their parents will still say, senior high is great, but I still want to go to college. I still want my child to go to college. And so for us, I think one area where we think there could be even more investment is on the whole guidance counseling side. I think we, in our conversations with guidance counselors, it's sometimes a little bit the forgotten child of the education sector. But the strength we see in guidance counselors is they can work within the existing education system. Because in the Philippines, there is no lack of options. There are, I think the numbers you were sharing were more than 10,000 senior high schools. There's 4,000 tech-voc institutes, 2,500 higher ed institutes. So it's not, what is lacking is not so much choice. We think what's lacking a little bit more is guidance in navigating those choices. And so I think we would welcome any additional budget for guidance counselors. I think as a profession it tends to be quite stretched. And it's also, I think, quite difficult in terms of the requirements, because you need to have a post-grad degree to be a guidance counselor, but often I believe you're on the same salary as someone who would, quote-unquote, only have an undergraduate degree. And so we think some investment in guidance counseling can lead to a lot more personalized outcomes, and that would be a little bit of a win-win. Because then the students who do want to work at graduation can kind of be guided in terms of, okay, these are the strands or tracks they should be taking, and these are the skills they should be trying to acquire in senior high. And then when they walk into the interview, they will already have all that knowledge. And for those students who want to get into college, they will be guided accordingly, so that I think what we're not looking for 100% acceptance into college. What we're looking for is every student who wants to go to college goes to college. And so that's how we're thinking about personalized outcomes. But I think echoing what Love said, we know that those kind of reforms take more than a few people in a room, and take more than any kind of budget. And so to the extent we can play a small part, we have a community of about 10 million students in the Philippines who are all online. And we understand that obviously this doesn't include students who are not yet online. But any kind of information you'd like to share, we'd always be happy to engage with our community to make sure that they're aware of all the options that they face. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. You mentioned guidance counselor. How can guidance counselors help in the improvement of quality, as well as improvement in employability? From your experience and what you are seeing right now, I know your website is geared towards helping the students find the right courses, no, in college. So I assume you interact with them on a regular basis.
Yes. So I think, and it's a great question, Senator. I think when we look at the role guidance counselors play, we've done a lot of studies, and one of the first things we saw was when we were talking to students, we would ask them, do you know what you want to do next? And at least 50% would say, like, I have no idea. And so it's very hard for a student to even start excelling or even start finding their way if they don't even know where they're going. And so the role of the guidance counselor is to essentially help map out the education to career pathways. And then once you've mapped out your pathway, which is, I want to be a welder, okay, fantastic, then you should prepare for this NC1 course in welding, and by the way, Tesla has vouchers. And then once you present a plan to a student and the student buys into it and understands how it fits his or her goals, then the next level becomes, okay, how do I get you into that Tesla course? How do I make sure that you pass? But we find that more than half of the students in this country don't even know where they want to go next. And so if you can just remove all that uncertainty from the student journey, already you can have a very positive impact. I think it's not a silver bullet, and by all means it will not suddenly get you 100% employability or 100% college entrance rates. But I think if you can remove uncertainty for half the population, that is already a big achievement in itself. That's kind of how we would think about the role of guidance counselors.
Thank you, Henry. We'll go back and discuss the other points. Ms. Walden, any comments?
Good afternoon, everyone. Senator Win, honorable members, and guests. So, GAIN, we've long been, our goal was always to understand that government, academia, and industry really have to work together, given there's a more competitive landscape and the demands of the 21st century. So we've always believed in global standards. So the K-12 initiative is fantastic, same as the 21st century skills. So we did a convention on kind of communication skills last year. This year was ICT literacy, but just sharing what we did last year, which was on one of the 4 skills you mentioned on 21st century. I think one thing that came up today, and Senator Wynn commented, was the need for comparable data that you can kind of compare where you are vis-a-vis employment standards, immigration standards, and also other educational systems. So actually, in our first year, we worked closely with people from PMAP, IBPAP, and they said, you know, since 1998, it's kind of been communication skills has always kind of been a long-standing #1 reason why our graduates are unable to get hired. So they did that in 1998 with GER-NER, and they did it 2006, and then I think IBPAP did something 2012. The same thing kind of came up. So we thought, can we look at the communication skills kind of aspect? One useful thing in this area is something called the CEFR. It's a common standard used in industry. So you look at immigration to the US for healthcare, immigration to the UK, local BPOs. If you look at, and you could also use it for teacher qualifications. It's being used in Thailand, Malaysia, South America. And it's also being used now for high school standards and kind of grade school standards to figure out where you are. So we said that was kind of a good place to start, because we could check at least one 21st century skill which has economic impact, and we could see where we are against kind of 90 countries around the world. So we decided to do this because in 2017, the UK published just an article. It just said there was a migration program for nurses to the UK. It was worth around 300 million in salaries, and it was I think they said 90% failed the English test. So I think one outcome was that program was cut. And then PRC spoke to us. They said 90%. There's this one guy, he failed an English test to go to the US for healthcare about 7 times. So he spent like that's $1,000 on the TOEFL test, kept failing. And I think one online English school came to us. They said they reduced their workforce from 3,000 seats to 1,000 seats. But, you know, and then they said it was just hard to hire talent. So we said this was something kind of good to look at, and it's a foundational skill. So we looked at English last year, and we said, you know, the average college graduate on the CFR, which is used in around 90 countries, was a B1. And then said, what else does a B1 stand for? It also stood for what the Thailand and Vietnam are now setting as their high school standard. So, you know, where the college graduate is today, that's what Thailand and Vietnam think their high school graduate should be. So I think, you know, I think we really have to understand that when we do standards, we don't do it in a bubble. When investors look at a country, they look at 150 different destinations and they choose. So when you look at English, in 2017, it said Malaysia, there was something on Business World, it said Malaysia now outperforms the Philippines on English proficiency. And when you look at Vietnam, from 2010 to 2017, they moved from very low proficiency to now moderate proficiency. So it's really understanding that when we do these standards, we should understand that it's not just us, but everyone else is trying to catch up. And I think one thing that when we spoke to HEMAP, the Healthcare Association, they said, when we presented our research, they said you need to be working on this yesterday, because it feels similar to like the auto industry, whatever, 20 odd years ago. So we'll just recommend from our end a couple of things. One is really leveraging common standards such as the CEFR, because that's at least used by industry, academia, and it's used by around 90 countries around the world, United Nations. English as a first language like Malaysia, and it's also used by ESL like Thailand, Vietnam, Costa Rica. Second is understanding that why global standards make sense is because all global knowledge is really in English now, and that the world is going open. So the US Department of Education is pushing something called open educational resources, which is why in kind of college now, it's becoming less and less mandatory to buy a textbook. So why does OER or open educational resources make sense? It's because it's being funded by people like the owner, the founder of Sun Microsystems, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Google Education. They're putting a lot of money in these kind of global resources that anyone can use. So given that the Philippines is kind of, we're not the biggest economy, and understanding that the US Department of Education budget is larger than our entire budget, right? It does make sense to kind of leverage on kind of common standards that the whole world is using, and that the whole world is really developing these open resources. So I guess that's it from our end from GAIN. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, and I have some questions, but I'll reserve it later on. So, Ma'am Bustos, any comments po?
Actually, I'm from the Assessment Curriculum Technology Research Center. We are a partnership between UP and the University of Melbourne, and we're funded by the Australian government. So our research center does research on 21st century skills, as what was mentioned earlier, formative assessment, the science and math achievement studies, mother tongue-based multilingual education, and just now we're doing the curriculum review. We were created to help DepEd make sense of this reform. And so what have we seen so far? For the science and math studies, the curriculum is spiraled in nature. And what we have seen is decreasing readiness of students as they go up the grades, the higher grades. And so they would begin, for example, for math, entering fourth grade, entering third grade with the readiness for it, like around 80%, but that diminishes as the child goes through the upper grades. And this phenomenon, we saw that too, even among the special science high schools. And so this has warranted DepEd, and DepEd has been very proactive in wanting a curriculum review project, which we started last month. What we've done so far is to look into the intended curriculum. And so we've been looking at the key stages, the standards, and the cognitive goals in relation to those. And then we will be getting into the implemented curriculum. So we do have the ideal curriculum, but how it is implemented, that needs to be investigated yet. We have some idea about the assessed curriculum with the NAT results, but as far as this particular inquiry is concerned, we are more concerned with the attained curriculum, and we think as a center that we will be able to do that around 2020, 2021. But, oh, by the way, in relation to 21st century skills, the Assistant Secretary mentioned earlier that DepEd was using a different test now, a different test format, and that is true. We've been working closely with BEA on these tests. And what is unique, I think, would be the Philippines is one of very few countries that have included 21st century skills in its national assessment. So not every country can produce that information in regard to problem solving, information literacy, and communication. So we're kind of ahead of others. So if that's a little good news. And so that's it from our center.
Ma'am, I have a quick question lang. You said earlier that as the grade levels go up, the readiness decreases.
That's
And
right.
what's the reason for that?
Actually, we're still trying to investigate that. We think that we do have a tough curriculum, and it is a curriculum that needs to be scaffolded. That means the learner that has to go through that curriculum has to receive a lot of support from the teacher and from other informed adults. Now, if they're left on their own, then definitely the curriculum is difficult to handle.
In summary po, you've seen the performance of our students, no, in the National Achievement Test.
Yes.
So, from your expert opinion, what should be the steps that government should undertake?
Actually,
Maybe a few steps lang, mga 2 or 3 top steps so we can
We are-
improve the outcomes.
we are seriously doing a curriculum review because right now, while we're seeing all of those results, we don't really know to which factor they should be attributed. So, and that's the reason why come June, we're looking into the implemented curriculum, how are teachers really implementing this curriculum. Initially, for this first quarter, we've looked at the documents themselves. So, what has to be done is to look at that alignment from the intended to the implemented to the assessed and finally to the attained. But that takes time. But what I'm saying is at least DepEd has really started doing that.
But a continuous
It is a continuous process.
I mean, independent of your center, DepEd internally should be
Yes, but
Should
I
be
think
doing
they should
that.
be the ones for us.
para hindi na tayo umabot sa point of no return.
Okay. We have been helping DepEd with the curriculum review. So in terms of capacity building, they're building capacity in that. Now, I think we need to be able to understand, we need to be able, at least our center, we need to be able to do the study quickly, just so we are able to pinpoint what are the reasons. Because right now, there are just too many reasons that could be blamed for the low performance, such as the curriculum probably, with the spiraling not really working for us the way we want it to work. Because you need to have covered the content in one grade level to be able to make good use of that for the next grade level. So if we're not able to do that really well, then we could have some problems. There are also some places where people are still talking about the availability of materials to support the curriculum. And so there are just too many things that we need to look into. We're not able to pinpoint yet which exactly is causing the low performance.
Yeah, but if you look at the per region, it's across the board. No? It's not as if there's one region na mataas, there's one region na it's across the board. So it's a systematic systematic deterioration of grades. No? So mabuti kung mayroong one, you can isolate problems. No?
We also have to know that the K-12 reform has many reforms that are attached to it, like the teacher education reform. So we probably have teachers that are not ready to implement that curriculum, who may not have the expertise to implement it. And so that bears investigating also. So, and also the content in the exams, because not everybody has gone through the entire curriculum. You do have, for example, in our study for grades 7, 8, 9, and 10, they took 7, 8, 9, and 10 under the K-12. But prior to that, that was still the old curriculum. And so you will see a lot of interplay between the old curriculum and the new curriculum. And so you cannot really just pinpoint which is the culprit. And so,
In other words, ma'am, we don't have answers
yes, but we're working towards those answers.
through Australian.
Through
Ausaid.
through ACT-RC, through the University of the Philippines and University of Melbourne.
Okay, all right. Any reaction, ma'am, kung dun sa curriculum review? I always thought that there is some form of internal review, no? Because we know the grades naman every year. May examinations naman ho tayo every year. So that will prompt some form of review from the inside, no, to detect where are the problems. Now I understand that there are so many factors that can affect performance. So
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. We confirm that after producing the first batch of the senior high school graduates, we are now into the curriculum review, and we have an educational partner, plus of course our other external and internal stakeholders reviewing our existing curriculum guides. And at the same time, and yes, we confirm also that although we are saying that we had already produced the first batch of senior high school graduates, it will only be in school year 2023 that we will be able to produce learners who had undertaken the entire implementation, the entire K-12 program. Yun. Kasi nga, sabi po nga ni ma'am, is yung implementation po natin, yung first year implementation of the K-12 program, we started it by training or enhancing our training as well as enhancing our curriculum for grade 1 and grade 7. As yearly, ganun po, grade 2 and then grade 8 po. I would like to confirm also that we had not identified all the issues as regards the poor performance of our learners in our national examinations. But let me also mention that our goal is to maximize the learning opportunities of our learners. So, ginagawa po namin yung lahat ng paraan para ma-addressan namin yung pangangailangan ng mga bata. So, what we are saying is, all the programs that had been mentioned earlier by Direct Sam, yung one school, one sport, one child, one sports, yung curriculum tracks natin na iba-iba rin yung strand, yung mga ADMs natin, yung MTB-MLE natin, so we go for inclusive education because we believe that if we will be able to address the learning opportunities or meet the learning opportunities of our learners, din doon po yung gusto nating mangyari na huwag silang mag-drop, yung tumaas yung NAT results po nila, mangyayari po yun. So yun yung, but of course, I do respect that we really have to address yung quality. But yung isa po rin yung tinitignan namin is to really address the educational opportunities, the learning opportunities of our learners. So lahat po, we have programs like, what I'm saying is, we are doing some alignments in the department. Earlier, we have shown you the roadmap for our curriculum, and this will be supported by the learning delivery. So we have different how do you call that, modalities in delivering instruction. This will also be supported by the production of our learning resources, plus of course the other offices like the provision of ICT, the creation of teachers, creation of non-teaching personnel, creation of items for guidance counselors, yung sa assessment po natin. So, kumbaga sabay-sabay po natin na ginagawa yan for us to improve the educational system in our country. Dahil po para sa bayan, para sa bata. And again, we are very grateful for this undertaking, Your Honor.
Love, any comments?
Actually, I'd like to commend DepEd because this is such a massive undertaking. So the fact that you're doing a lot is already something that we could be happy about. But I actually wanted to answer your question that you addressed to Dr. Bustos about what we can do. This is a recommendation not to the DepEd, but as a result of the changes in the curriculum. Teachers are the main modality to deliver the curriculum. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is there isn't much alignment in the standards that professional standards for teachers that DepEd has. The teacher education programs that our TEIs deliver, and then even the connection between the teacher training and the assessment at the licensure exam level. And so what we also need to look at is that alignment. Given that nagbago yung curriculum, kailangan nating ma-measure kung kaya ba ng mga teachers na lumalabas sa colleges natin, sa teacher education institutions natin, na ituro yung bagong curriculum. And kung yung test ba na tinitake nila, nakaka-measure ba talaga sa competence na yun? Kasi right now, we're not seeing that. So if I may recommend one step, one of the 2 or 3, we need to check that alignment and maybe capacitate the Teacher Education Council that ASEC mentioned earlier, get PRC on board, and also the CHED technical panels. I think our friends from PRC could speak to the, RCTQ could speak to the alignment between the licensure exam, the curriculum changes, and the teacher education programs, para naman ma-address tong difficulty in the delivery of the new curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have to remember we have 27 million students who we want to have grade A's. No, so magturo lang nga ng isang bata, mahirap na 27 million pa. No? So it's really a big challenge, and that's why we're here to talk about this issue and look for solutions, and hopefully how we can help here in the Senate in implementing those solutions. Mr. Pantoja? Yes. Any comments po?
Good afternoon po, Senator. My name is Caleb Pantoja, and I'm working with the Philippine National Research Center for Teacher Quality. We have been working with DepEd on the development of the Philippine professional standards for teachers. So these standards is K-12 aligned, and it addresses some of the concerns raised here, like ICT and inclusive education. So the standards have already been implemented and rolled out. One of the things that we are currently working on in terms of the standards is making sure that the teacher training institutions are able to align their programs and courses for teacher training to make sure that their graduates are already able to perform the beginning teacher indicators of the professional standards. So we are working with some of the teacher training institutions in checking and revising their professional education programs to make sure that they are producing graduates and teachers who are ready to implement the K-12. Also, in support of the PPST, we have begun to develop the professional standards for school heads and supervisors. What else? Also, in support of the in-service teacher training, we are working on the re-engineering of the National Educators Academy of the Philippines. What else can I mention here? So that's about it from our center.
But Mr. Pantoja, yung mention kanina ni Love, no, that what I'm hearing is may required curriculum for K-12, but that's not being taught in the higher education institution. So there is, I guess, a misalignment or a lack of synergy.
So far, sir, yes.
So
we are working.
May ganun ba kayong assessment?
Your Honor, please allow me to answer that question.
Yes, Mr. Franco.
Although I'm not the project leader of that particular project, but RCTQ is also handling the curriculum quality audit, which is, this particular project is auditing the courses offered at the tertiary level, and they're trying to figure out, this curriculum quality audit tries to audit the competencies that are required of the teachers, pre-service teachers, and also those who are beginning teachers, and try to figure out whether there's a match between what is being offered at in the undergraduate courses and what they are expected to have as teachers, pre-service teachers. So these are all in the works, and we are very happy that Ms. Love mentioned that, and I think they're also working with us in that particular.
How do we correct that? I think that's fundamental, no? That what's being required by DepEd is not being taught in the higher education institutions. That's a fundamental, I think it's a fundamental issue that we need to resolve, no? That's why maybe our teachers coming out of college are not, I guess, are not matched, no, to teach what is being required by DepEd. Hence the low performance of the students. No?
For now, sir, I think those who have already graduated without because the CQA is being implemented right now. So obviously, those who have graduated may not be able to experience, or I mean, to experience the change in terms of the curriculum. But I think that the Department of Education is working very hard in order to address the...
Dapat yan with DepEd and PRC, or DepEd and CHED. No? There's a continuum from DepEd to CHED to PRC.
Yes, Your Honor. I would like to support their statements on the PPST. So DepEd, of course, with our education partners, had come up with the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. And so we had this conversation with our COEs, the Centers of Excellence, and the CODs, Centers of Development. As mentioned by Mr. Pantoja, that's a great challenge for them to produce these teachers in their pre-service training, the teachers that they should possess, that they should graduate should have possessed these skills, particularly on the level 1, the beginning teachers. Kasi po that PPST, so what we are saying, bago kayo graduate, eto na, bago kayo ma-absorb sa DepEd, meron na kayong standards na ganito, meron na po kayong skills na ganito. Because we are also aligning yung policies namin sa recruitment sa PPST po. So, and this conversation has been presented to TEC, no, and particularly sa mga COEs po natin, yung mga teacher education po natin.
We'll go back to this topic later on. I think this is a... Dr. Bustos, are you raising your hands? Yeah. Okay.
The curriculum for teacher education was released in 2017, late 2017. So the graduates of that curriculum will be available for the workforce around 2022. And so this would be the batch of teachers that would have undergone training with the K-12 in mind. But any graduate before 2022 will need to be assisted probably using in-service training, just so they're abreast with all of these developments in the K-12.
In other words, we'll see some better results after
hopefully.
2022.
Around 2022, 2023.
For re-election na ako nun. Yeah,
and sir, para just to connect to what Dr. Bustos is saying, we also need an exam that will make sure na talaga bang prepared sila to teach. So right now kasi hindi natin alam na kung yung licensure exam for teachers actually measures that. So if we can also open up the test for some validity testing just so we can see the alignment, so that by 2022 we produce the K-12 ready teachers, and we can really say that they are in fact K-12 ready by the results of a licensure exam that is aligned with the PPST. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
just on why we always believe in global standards. So we also looked at teacher standards. There's a lot. There's the Nielsen framework, right? There's the 7 C's from Cambridge. It really always makes sense to align, because when you look at something like the Nielsen, there's Bill Gates did a project with 3,000 videos or hundreds of thousands of hours of what exemplary teaching looks like. So if the PPST would be aligned, or we would align our initiatives to kind of what people are doing globally, you get a big head start in funding, because instead of having to start creating videos from scratch, you start with kind of 20 years of training courses, 3,000 videos, all from Harvard, Stanford, on what great teaching looks like. And I agree with Love. Teaching always has the largest. I think Rand did that piece of research. Teaching has the largest R-squared, or coefficient of determination, for student success. So aligning with global standards and content makes sense.
Thank you. John, any reaction?
Thank you, Senator, for inviting us from Synergia. We're certainly a different bunch of people from who have been speaking so far. We are a nonprofit education group that works with teaching teachers to be better teachers. We try to coordinate with LGUs to see that they will also be connected to the education programs that we have. We are in about 102 municipalities, and I am on the ground. I teach teachers, and I've been doing so for 15 years now. So I have a different take from all of especially some of the more optimistic, rosy reports here. I find it, I'm rather dismayed, in fact, by what I see in the teacher competence and our students. There is a disconnect, really, between the education mandates that have been enshrined in our Constitution, later on subsequent acts with that of our work, and there's a disconnect between that and the way we are teaching teachers and parents and connecting with LGUs, if ever. The World Bank report of 2018 reports a worldwide crisis in education, which is very much mirrors what is our crisis here. 3/4 of grade 3 children who were tested cannot understand a simple sentence. The same number cannot solve mathematical figures when they reach grade 5. I see this a lot in the provinces. I see a lot of this sort of problems that are facing children. There was no discussion here, or there was a little bit maybe, about the fact that in the way we're very much interested in making sure that a child can read, but even more so that a child can comprehend. Comprehension is very, very important. And our figures of frustrated readers is hovering around 40%. That's a lot of students. They may be able to read, but they don't understand what they're reading. To me, frustration means lack of comprehension, and that lack is translated into a lack of a moral compass, a lack of a sense of right or wrong, a lack of exercising citizenship, like who should we vote for in the elections. These are the things that worry me a lot. And then, because I'm on the ground, there are many things, again, that people don't want to sort of deal with or sort of try to sidestep. One is that children come to schools, they haven't eaten, they're malnourished, they are unprepared for school. They have their parents don't really care, or the parents want to pull them out of school so that they will work in the house or in the farm. There's a very harsh environment, there's child abuse, and all of this really has an effect on childhood development. I see that teachers lack the skills of motivation to be effective. That is to say that I still remember my high school and grade school days when teachers were very boring and very authoritative. They're very despotic. They teach by rote. And that's the same thing that's happening up to now. And that's why there's a high dropout rate. Our textbooks, sometimes I run a library, our textbooks wind up in cupboards under glass. So is also many of the donated computers. It's as if they were to be displayed rather than to be used. And I think there's also a problem with that, integrating curriculum and classroom lessons. There is poor management and governance in schools, particularly in the principals area. That's why we're also teaching principals. And that management capacity is substantially lower in schools than even in manufacturing. So what can we do? I suggest we put in place good metrics to monitor whether programs and policies are delivering. Credible information can shape incentives facing politicians, and student performance should be presented in salient and acceptable ways to foster political and community engagement. The questions are, where are the areas that our children are weak? What segment of the population is lagging behind? And since the DepEd people are here, we just wanted you to know that the 2017 results of the National Achievement Test has not been publicly available to us. And so we have a problem because we want to also study what is the situation. We want teaching to be more effective and not episodic, not theoretical, and not myopic. Training should be targeted and followed up with a lot of coaching. Really, there's so much to be done in terms of teacher training. Even I think the teacher training manual should be reviewed. As always, because we are what we do, you need to really have strong participation and partnership between the schools and the communities. We notice that the success of any schools, the NAT scores, etc., like in the case of Valenzuela, it was under Senator Gatchalian's leadership and now Mayor Rex that pushes so much for education that's why the figures, the intelligence scores in that city is one of the highest in the country. And again, that has to do with the partnership between schools and communities. So in ending, we would like to support Senate Resolution number 675 because we have to pause and see what really went wrong here, what is being done not right, and how to move on. And I am aghast at the amounts of money that we have already given to education. And in my 15 years, I don't really see any noticeable changes. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And since you mentioned Valenzuela, behind me, wearing black, is our former superintendent in Valenzuela, si Ma'am Flor Mayari. It's during her term when we topped the National Achievement Test nationwide in elementary. But it was, I think, if I remember it correctly, ma'am, parang nasa 75 lang yun eh. Pero top na yun, no? So meaning, yeah, I think no, that's high already. No, but it is high already. But I remember closely, ma'am, if you remember, sabi ni Jesse Robredo before, when we were talking about education, which is, Jesse is the founder of Synergia. Sabi niya, alam mo, dito sa atin, masaya na tayo kung 75 eh. No? Dahil tayo yung pinakamagaling sa mga bagsak. No? O pinakamagaling sa mga pasang-awa. No? So, because of we're so happy with the 75 level, but of course, we have to hit higher. No? That's why we're here to find solutions. No? Lastly, John, I have some question, but I'll go with Mr. Orbeta. And sir, since taga-PIDS kayo, pwede bang gawin yung case study ito, no? Under PIDS?
Yeah.
Because I think we have, sabi nga ni John, a crisis in the mid. So, magandang maging case study ng PIDS to. No?
Yeah, thank you for inviting us, Senator Chalana. I think the one, just like the top 3 themes I'd like to
from what the discussion is. One is, of course, John has already mentioned the importance of information. Information tells us if you have a problem and how deep the problem is. And you don't solve a problem by hiding information or not releasing information. So that's basically, I think the center was very brave at showing that we are 40% or not. We have to face that. That's not the problem of DepEd, that's our problem. That's a nation's problem, and we have to address that. I think the first step at solving the problem is accepting that we have a problem. And information helps us accept that we have a problem, as the Senator has already said. So we should not be shy at accepting that we are 40% and do something about it. I think, as a researcher, I said, a grade is a grade. You have to do something about it. That's the solution. So the next one is, I think, the financing aspect. As the Senator has already mentioned, you have poured in a lot of money. And I think the only thing that the money has done is improve access, I think. So we have to do something more, I think, in terms of quality. But we don't have all the money of the world, so we have to be strategic, I think, in terms of... so even the things that we already know as the one that can solve that can be solutions to the quality, which the Senator has mentioned, and I very much... We're past the access part. I agree with the Senator very much. We have to do something with the quality, because facing fourth industrial revolution is all a question about quality, how you compete and all and drilling down on the basic knowledge. So I think we should be strategic, because I've seen rigorous impact evaluations about teachers and books that doesn't work as well. So that means that you cannot just be throwing teachers and books at the schools and improve quality, and that you have to be strategic, and maybe it needs something more. I think we mentioned that teachers might be teaching and not be prepared to teach the curriculum that K-12 has prepared. So those are the things that, so we need to be intentional and systematic about things that we should be experimenting on, continue to experiment on, accept if we fail, and find solutions. The idea is finding the solution. I think that should be our finding solutions to the problem, accept the problem first. For the K-12, I'd like to show, because we have done studies on K-12 and senior high school, I think that one of the things that I'm worried about K-12 implementation is the tracking, and the tracking is a very good tracking students into different, and actually that's one of the acknowledged positive by the students. They said that we are more mature, we know now what we do in college or what do in life. The additional 2 years allow us to think a little bit through. But what happens is that the core courses are being are not taught. The core courses are supposed to be taught at a college level. What happens, I think, is that the core courses are taught at the junior high school level. So they find it repeat, uninteresting. So they were not interested in deepening their knowledge on physics, on mathematics, and all this. And I'm afraid, because that's the one that we will need for the fourth industrial revolution. Very good knowledge on basic things, language, physics, mathematics, technology, and all of that. But that's not being taught. It's taught as a junior high school, because most of the teachers perhaps are from junior high school. We have to be teaching that at the college level, because that's the intention of K-12. So I think that was the side impact of the K-12 that has to be addressed. We have to be serious about the core courses, because that will bring us to the future and the fourth industrial revolution. The other thing that there is we interview the students as well as the HR managers of the meaning before they graduated, the K-12. They said, we are mature now, but we are not very much confident that we can get the jobs. And most of the jobs that we'll be doing is just temporary jobs. We are not supposed to be staying here. We want, if we don't have money, we do some jobs and do college next time around. So that's the importance of building the core courses for them, even if they know the right-away jobs that will employ them. So that's also an important objective for people who cannot go to college right away, for instance, which may be solved by now because of tuition. But that's the perspective. But the other thing that I've heard, but the industry that or the HR managers that we interviewed, they said that we don't know what senior high school is teaching, what competencies senior high school is supposed to produce. So we have to test them first and know what they can do. So there is a lot of advocacy that perhaps DepEd has to do to tell the industry what senior high school is supposed to be teaching them, and that should be a thing that DepEd should be doing, because the industry doesn't know what they know that there's a K-12, but what K-12 imparts to students when they get out of the school, they don't know that much. So my last point is that DepEd needs a lot. They're doing a gargantuan job. DepEd needs a lot of help to implement K-12 well, and there's no other DepEd. So it needs us to, my appeal is to be transparent, that there are issues and the very serious responsibilities that they are implementing. There are issues they are facing. You have to accept that those issues and gather around people to help them solve those problems. I think that should be the, starting with the releasing a little bit more consistently. I agree with John that why don't we, it needs a senator of the republic to get the data on that. It should be a public, you can't hide that from people. People will somehow know that we are 40%, and we better accept that and do something about it. I think that's, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Urbeta. I know PIDS has been doing some independent research on education, and I think medyo matagal na rin po wala. I would like to urge PIDS through Dr. Reyes to help us independently analyze the basic education system and situation. I think it's good to have some external pair of eyes looking in, no, so that recommendations will be independent and also more comprehensive.
That we are currently, our first study on senior high school was about grade 12 and HR managers. We asked for the perspective. The second is really a review of the, I think that was mentioned by DepEd. But there's a third one. We're also reviewing the multilingual MTBLE program as well. We are on the review of the implementation and see what's happening there and what can be improved and all that. Basically, that's the nature of the study. How it's implemented, what's the plan of that program, how it's implemented, and what can we do about it to improve the implementation. Those are the nature of the studies that we're doing. And yeah.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, Villaflor.
Yes, I just would like to clarify the results of the NAT, which was administered. NAT G10 was administered November 12 to 16 back in 2018, but since this was national, we usually would give 3 months, within 3 months for the release of the results. Now, it's been like more than 3 months now, and probably it's in the retrieval of the test materials that are delivered to our service provider that affects the release of the timely release of the results.
So delay na ho siya, ma'am, ng 3 months?
Yes.
But when is the timetable? No? Kasi
it should be 3 months. Within 3 months, the release should be within 3 months after the administration of the test. And that was administered back in November 12 to 16 in 2018. So counting that one, that's December, January, February. So I guess the delay in the release must be in the retrieval of those test materials that need to be processed.
Anong ang bagong timetable po, ma'am? Anong bagong, kasi it's already delayed, no? So I'm assuming there's a new timetable that
well, we are calling our provider, our forwarder rather, and asking them, monitoring which of those division offices have not retrieved yet their test materials, because that would also affect the processing, timely processing of our service provider.
So sooner, I guess everyone's also, everyone timely release of information is also important, and
yes, we
so that
understand
we can react, because yung pinaka-latest ko is school year 2016-2017. So what we're waiting is school year 2017-2018.
Yeah.
And anyways, Asek, I know it's quite overwhelming. In fact, I've been taking notes, and talagang sabi ko nga sa staff ko, mas malalim pala itong problema. I thought simple increasing the budget and bukas 70-80% na yung grades ng students natin. It's really easier to build schools, to hire teachers, to buy computers, but it's quite difficult, no, to improve the performance of our students, no, because definitely the whole system needs to be reformed, no? And one of a few items that we really need to pay attention to is, number one is Dr. Bustos mentioned earlier the curriculum review as well as the entire curriculum design, no? And I think your organization's helping us or helping the government in terms of focusing on this aspect. Then number two, another takeaway is the alignment with the HEIs. Love made mention of that, and also the group of Mr. Pantoja. We need to focus on that, and that needs really close coordination with CHED and at the end the Philippine Regulatory or the Professional Regulatory Commission. And then another one is the of course the adjustment from the industry, you know, I think and also from government itself, you know. A lot of the qualifications remain the same prior to K-12, no? Even dito sa gobyerno, we need to look at that. What Wallen mentioned earlier, the global standards and the global trends, and also we need to compare ourselves internationally. I'm happy that DepEd took a bold step of taking the PISA exam or being part of the PISA. Is that a policy decision na moving forward will be part of PISA? No, because I remember a few years back when I was a congressman, I was lobbying to for DepEd to participate in that, to know exactly where we are, no? Because without comparison, and now we're, you know, the world is interconnected, and when you talk about Fourth Industrial Revolution, we're talking about what's happening around the world, and I think the first step is compare ourselves in terms of quality and performance vis-a-vis other nations. So I'm happy that DepEd made a conscious effort of participating in PISA. I think the results will come out soon, I understand. December pa.
After a year, and this is administered every 3 years.
So ito po yung mga takeaways ko, and ASEC, any, I don't know if you can answer this today, no, after hearing all of this. And the main focus is the quality and the performance of the students. Meron ba tayong, aside from what you demonstrated earlier, but meron ba tayong specific program or specific activity that will improve quality over time and improve the performance of our students over time? No? Because I was also looking at the specific programs here, no, in this packet, and wala akong nakita na really targets the improvement of quality of our education system. But from DepEd's point of view, meron ba tayong very specific na mag-a-address nitong low NAT scores natin and improve the quality of our education system? Or maybe performance of our students?
Again, Your Honor, we would like to overemphasize that our aim is to maximize the learning opportunities of our learners, because in doing so, the learners will improve their performance, and at the same time, that will entice them to really, that will motivate them to value their education.
Maximization, is that, will that improve the performance of our students? Is that a scientific or something that the department has studied thoroughly, and when we implement this, the outcomes will dramatically improve? Because I think a shotgun approach will not help improve the outcomes of the students. Kasi that's what we have been doing in the past. But meron ba tayong targeted approach or a strategic approach, sabi nga ni Mr. Urbeta, to improve the outcomes?
Yung pong, we would like to translate that battle cry, the providing learning opportunities to all our children via our educational programs like yung modernization program natin, yung provision ng ICT, yung MTB, MLE po natin, yung sa sports po natin, even yung sa guidance program po natin. So we are looking into the programs that will address the diverse needs of our learners.
We will send you, and we'll send everyone a copy of the transcript if you want, but we'll send the secretary officially the copy of the transcript. And what I want to see, and I think what everyone wants to see, is an improvement in the performance of our students, primarily gauged by the National Achievement Test, among many things. And would like to urge the department to report to us kung ano po yung ginagawa para mag-improve yung National Achievement Test. And I want you to discuss this with the secretary and the whole DepEd family, that we have a crisis right now. I think I do agree that we have a crisis right now. And this, ang worry ko is it might slide even further in the next few years. If you don't address it right now, then we will have problems in the next few years. And the problems are also connected to the workforce, connected to the industry, connected to the development of our nation. So it starts here. This is the fundamental aspect in the development of our nation, and we need to address it now. Budget has been increasing over time. I think it's about time to seriously look at this problem. And I would like to report out to the Senate, ang output nitong what we have discussed in the this afternoon is to report out to the Senate the problems and also the solutions. And kung kailangan ng pera, how much do we need to fund those solutions? We will not probably reach those solutions here in this hearing. That's why I want you to go back to the Secretary and say, mayroon tayong problema, ito yung napag-usapan natin. Ang ano ko naman is how can we help here in the Senate. We can help through policy, we can help through laws, we can help through budget. But we need to know exactly from the department kung ano yung strategy natin to address this problem. Sir?
Sir, just to inform, sir, yung this body, DepEd is currently formulating the Basic Education Master Plan 2030, which is aligned to SDG. So the stage right now is we are at the stage of sector analysis. This development of Basic Education Master Plan is assisted by the UNESCO, Paris, and Bangkok. So we are expected to have the draft 0 by August. And then the other thing, sir, is that I chair the Interagency Committee on Education and Statistics in the PSA. And then right now we have a final resolution of the adoption of learner information system in the college and then the technical education institution. And I think Love is aware that we initially talk about how do we now get information from industry, the high school graduates who proceeded to industry, so that we can have a complete picture of the transition of the senior high school to post-senior high school education.
Any last words from our resource persons? Kung meron po kayong mga last comments? Kung wala naman po, of course, what we're exercising today is really to put emphasis on accountability. And of course, DepEd is accountable to this issue and to the performance of our students. And later on, when we talk about budgets at the end of the year, alam niyo naman, these issues will crop up. So as early as now, we're already flagging DepEd that we have a problem, and we're here naman to look for solutions and to help you in executing those solutions. So Kung wala naman po, once again, thank you very much for your time, and really appreciate your honest and straightforward comments. Everything naman will be taken as a positive approach to hopefully, find a solution that will end this problem. Thank you very much. Meeting is suspended.